Information fueled.
Opinion driven.
This is Nashville's Morning News with Dan Mandis.
And so, my fellow Americans,
we talk news.
8:07 Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk. Your weather today real quick. A high of 56. Rain most of the day right now. 42 degrees at Super Talk. 99.7 WTN. Matthew Hurtt is joining us on the Newsmaker Hotline. You spent 3 weeks. Was it 3 weeks in China?
Just about 3 weeks, Dan. It was a really great experience, honestly, and it probably going to upset some of your listeners, but 3,000 years of culture, of history, of art, of food, for the Lunar New Year, which was at the very end of January. And on the personal side, my girlfriend is from there, and this was my second trip. And so I am not, in fact, registered as a foreign agent. I try to stay away from three-letter officials, both in this country and abroad. And so spent plenty of time with family, and no time with intelligence officers. But it's great to be back stateside where we are 13 hours behind the time in China. So I'm adjusting this morning.
All right, so let me ask you just real quick. You were there in China during this discussion regarding President Trump and the tariff war between China and America, so on and so forth. Is any of that discussion making it to the people of China, or is that just completely blocked out, or is it presented with a spin pro-China?
It's a great question, Dan. Every night on Chinese television, they have state news, and I watched quite a bit of that.
Kind of like CNN here?
Kind of like CNN. The last time I was there in 2023, there was conversation about BRICS, which was sort of the economic collaboration between China and the Southern Hemisphere. There was a lot of coverage of that back in 2023. This time, the Chinese state media was mostly focused on Lunar New Year and I think the winter qualifying Olympics activity that is taking place in Asia right now. So there was almost no U.S. news, no talk of tariffs, and just anecdotally. Now, I didn't go over there to do any business, and so I didn't have any high-level conversations with folks. But going into the grocery store, going into the restaurants, there did not seem to be any of this news that had permeated the general population. And so most Chinese people do get a significant amount of their news from an outlet called China Daily on their phones or from CCTV on television at night.
Right.
And there was almost no conversation about that.
8:10 Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Elon Musk, where are you?
Well, he was in the Oval Office. I got to ask, Matthew, what was your reaction to Elon's rather epic appearance to the right of Donald Trump as Trump sat at the Resolute desk?
This is so exciting. The one thing I did stay tuned in with over the last 3 weeks is news in the United States. And
did you listen to me in China?
I did not listen. I didn't know that the connection would be fast enough. It did take long enough to get onto the website where I do consume news. But there has been so much that has happened over the last 3 weeks that I think are the benefit of the American people. And 4 years ago, nobody elected Dr. Fauci. Nobody elected these dozens of other bureaucrats who then used government to punish the American people. And I'm so excited to come back. I've come back to a totally changed country where Elon Musk has used the efficiency of the private sector by hiring, quote unquote, these kids to go in and root out waste, corruption, fraud, abuse in the system, and then to give federal employees an incentive to get out. You can resign, and what ends up happening there is they won't backfill the positions, and they'll hire people who will do the jobs. Today, there's snow on the ground in Washington D.C., and OPM said you've still got to come into work. The work that we're doing is too important, and so a lot of federal employees are very mad that they had to come into the office. I've, of course, been in the office since about 5:30 this morning, and so there is a lot going on, and there's a lot of optimism, and the polls seem to show that the American people support it. So this is, what a time to be alive. And Elon Musk is, I think, doing a significant service to this country in showcasing a lot of this stuff. And I'm so glad that Donald Trump has put him in such a position of importance.
Well, and the thing is, and I know you're all caught up now, so you know what's going on with the resistance. The resistance isn't just, Democrats working within the federal government. You've got all of these federal judges. You've got the leftist media as well. And they are on full alert. I mean, it is just, I was talking to Hans von Spakovsky earlier today, and I know that you know who Hans is. And he says that we are in a constitutional crisis. The left is trying to say that we're in a constitutional crisis because Donald Trump is attacking the Constitution. Hans says, and I agree with him, the constitutional crisis is actually the fact that we have all of these federal judges who just en masse are opposing everything that Donald Trump is trying to do. They're the ones that are trying to usurp power from the executive, the president of the United States.
We knew this was going to happen, and I heard your segment with Hans. He's a great guy. He does great stuff at the national level and here in Northern Virginia. And the resistance among the grassroots leftists that we saw in 2016 and 2017 does not exist, but the resistance in the federal government, and in particular, Biden and Obama appointed judges are doing everything they can to slow the progress. And we know government works at a snail's pace, and so a lot of what Elon Musk and his team and those who are coming into the various departments are doing is quicker than government has ever acted before, and that has caused a bit of a shock to the system, and people are dealing with that. But certainly these judges and the other entrenched deep state staffers in these departments are being shown what is happening, and the Trump administration knew they were going to have to litigate these, and I think other judges and even the Supreme Court will side with Trump. As Hans said earlier this morning, will side with Trump more often than not.
Well, and the thing is, federal judges have stopped Democrat presidents as well, but this just seems to be all these judges, and it just seems like this whole thing is almost like a coordinated attack, almost like an offensive line. You know what I'm talking about? They're just all these judges, and it's planned. We're going to be part of the resistance. This is the plan. And I believe that all of this will eventually go to the Supreme Court, where I believe most of the things that Donald Trump is looking to do will ultimately get the pass from the Supreme Court, and most, if not all of this stuff, will eventually go through. Fingers crossed on that. Weather today, a high of 56 and rain most of the day off and on, and right now 43 at Super Talk 99.7 WTN. One of the things that I find fascinating, Matthew, is that you have all of these Democrats and they're screaming, oh, Elon Musk is a co-president. He wasn't elected. All of this nonsense. I love that Senator Katie Britt just absolutely pummeled the media with this one soundbite.
Conversations about a co-president, referencing Elon Musk, referencing the work that Doge is doing. I think it's important to remember that President Trump ran on this. I mean, he said we're going to look for wasteful spending across our government. We're $36 trillion in debt, y'all. That's not only fiscally irresponsible, it is actually morally irresponsible. And the difference in this administration and the last administration is that President Trump is actually the final arbiter. And it's interesting that none of you had anything to say over the last 4 years when it is clear that our commander-in-chief was not in command.
Boom.
And if we're going to use the term co-president, then let's go back and say co-president Jake Sullivan, co-president Ron Klain, co-president Jill Biden. I mean, it seems that some of the biggest decisions were made during the president's afternoon nap time.
Yep. What do you think?
Senator Britt is absolutely right. President Trump took Elon Musk on the campaign trail in the final 6 or 8 weeks of the election. There was no question that he was going to be a significant player in this administration, and many people voted for it. As a small L libertarian who operates in the political system, I enthusiastically voted for Donald Trump, and this is one of the reasons why, because he promised to put people into places in government like Elon Musk and like many others who are being confirmed through the Senate now to change the way Washington works. And Senator Britt is right, and these are exciting opportunities. My advice to your listeners is we can't just say that November 5th was Victory Day. They have to keep pressure on these senators, and some of this stuff with USAID funding and others, there will be Republicans like Senator Lindsey Graham and others who are going to try to slow things down and slow some of this progress, and we have to hold those individuals accountable as well.
Yeah, and I do find it interesting where I think Hans used a great term earlier, a great phrase earlier today. It's like the Democrats are dousing themselves with fire and taking a match and just blowing up the party. They think that they're part of this resistance and that they're doing something productive. The only thing that they're doing is like every day we see Maxine Waters. Every day we see Elizabeth Warren. We see all of these Democrats in front of podiums and so forth screaming about Elon Musk and complaining about what he's doing. Well, the reality is, as Katie Britt just said, people approve of what they're doing. That's number one. But number two, the results. I mean, we are finding out some gross expenditures. You know, people that are 150 years old still collecting Social Security. What's up with that? Gross inefficiencies. How does people who only have a salary of a couple $100,000 end up as millionaires many times over? So they're finding a lot of stuff, and I think that what they need to do is they need to, and I've said this 1,000 times, but you need to put on one side of the screen Maxine Waters and all of these other idiot Democrats on the other side of the screen as they're complaining about Doge. All of the waste, just a scroll up, all of the waste that we have found out from the federal government. I think they're clearly hiding something.
Well, Congressman Tim Burchett from East Tennessee, who used to be down in the state capitol in Nashville, he's highlighted a bunch of this on his Twitter and X account. He's doing a great work. To quote Vice President J.D. Vance, I don't care, Margaret, about the hair on fire activity of the Democrats. This is when you take the case to the American people. Do the American people think we should support our families at home, to support the troops abroad, to make sure that government does what it's supposed to do for the American people? 9 times out of 10, they're going to say we want to prioritize domestic spending on American priorities over transgender operations in Guatemala or whatever it happens to be. Yep. And though these may only be a fraction of the federal budget, they are symptomatic of an out-of-control leviathan, as has been said over decades, a leviathan that is wholly unaccountable to the people. And Donald Trump got elected and is using people like Elon Musk to now hold them to account. And the people who are losing out on the funding are the ones who are screaming the loudest. All of these people, Jamie Raskin from Maryland and many other members of Congress, have ties to these organizations that are getting millions of your money, taxpayer dollars, to continue doing whatever it is that they do.
One of the things, and somebody from the super text line, Larry, wants to know, please ask Matthew, why can't Trump's cabinet get confirmed? It sounds like Tulsi Gabbard is going to be confirmed today, actually at 11 o'clock. At least that's what I'm hearing. My sources on the ground. But Pete Hegseth did get confirmed. I know the Vice President Vance has done incredible work in behind the scenes discussions with the problematic senators. It seems like so far things are going well. We'll have to see about RFK, but what do you think?
Well, it's a great question. RFK and Tulsi are not traditional Republican allies, and so a lot of the Republican senators who aren't up for re-election next year or in 4 years feel like they don't have to be as accountable to the voters. Generally, there's deference given to the president, but he is doing something that is, that we haven't seen before. I'm fairly confident. I've seen, most everybody has gone through. We had an issue at the very beginning with an attorney general nominee and we got Pam Bondi out of it. I think is a great move. People like Pete Hegseth and what he has done already in the position. We're seeing success in this administration, and the left doesn't have a messaging component. And Donald Trump and his team are working so quickly that the left cannot go from crisis to crisis and make the case to the American people. There's no unified messaging. It's just important for your listeners like Larry to pick up the phone and call Senator Blackburn and call whomever and say, make sure that you're advocating for these people, make sure that you're voting for the nominees.
Well, and we're going to have, Matt Murphy is going to have Senator Bill Haggerty on this afternoon. I'm positive that'll come up. One of the things, real quickly, we spoke about this earlier this week, where the headline was Donald Trump refuses to name or support or endorse J.D. Vance as his successor. Basically, what Donald Trump said was, as the question was asked, do you support or believe that J.D. Vance will be your successor? And Trump said no. And then he went on to say it's too early, so on and so forth. What do you think about this? Is launched beyond the midterms, and let's go to the next presidential election. It's going to be a wide open primary. It is going to be crazy. I'm thinking that you're going to have Ron DeSantis. You're going to have J.D. Vance. I'm sure that there's others that are going to be out there. What do you think about J.D. Vance?
Well, we're light years away from the 2028 presidential election. I am so excited about J.D. Vance being plucked out of the Senate from Ohio to serve as vice president. But who knows? He may be president of Mars by 2028 if Elon Musk keeps working at it. I think we're way too far away from the next presidential election, and it's important that supporters of the president and others stay focused on what's happening now and keep our eye on the ball to make sure we get this agenda across the finish line and we get these nominees confirmed.
I'm sorry, you didn't answer the question. I'm totally kidding. I'm sitting, just so you know, I'm sitting here and I'm listening to you and I'm like, he has been listening to politicians way too long, man. Because that was a great way to try to obfuscate and not answer the question. But you are right. Here's the great thing about Republicans. We have a massive bench. I mean, we got all kinds of people that are out there. And a lot of them are, I don't want to use the term disciples because that's the wrong word, but it's the only one that's coming to my mind. But Donald Trump is mentoring a lot of these conservatives. And so I think that not only I like J.D. Vance, but there's going to be a lot of other folks as well that are going to be out there that could very easily do great in the primary, and we'll see what happens. So that's all I got. Matthew, how do people find you on Twitter?
I'm on Twitter at Matthew Hurtt, MattheWHurtt.
All right, thank you, man. Have a good weekend. It's 8:24 on Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk. Joan, did you like how I totally called him out?
You did. You got him, Dan.
Come on, man. Answer the question. Whatever.